How's it going, everyone? Today I'll be answering questions from the previous Patreon post, starting first with one about composition. I see a number of specific questions here, and I'll start first with the one about thought process. I would say that although it's very difficult to answer this question because it really depends, I've been beginning to understand lately that a musical idea really starts from the whole body and, as cliche as it sounds, the heart rather than the ears specifically or something that happens at the instrument, because I think music is a means to capture a certain feeling, and then from there it gets translated into something that is more concrete in terms of sound, whether it's a melody or harmony or some kind of tonal shift, whatever it is. And how it gets transcribed depends on the situation and, of course, what you're into as a composer. But sometimes this process is really slow and tedious. I will have maybe 3 bars written, and then I'll just literally go beat by beat, considering, does this sound right? And then I would change something. Oh, that sounds better. I like that. And then maybe I'll try another thing, and I'll feel, for some reason, extremely sure about that. And then I'll move on to the next bar and go from there. And certain bars will come a little faster than others. But in general, this process will be slow and tedious. Sometimes, though, this happens super fast, almost like everything is obvious. So because of this, the whole compositional process is still rather mysterious to me. I just do my best to work with what's happening in the moment. If I were to add one more thing specifically, I do tend to take a lot of improvisations and turn them into compositions, especially lately. I have a video on that on my channel where I specifically go through certain examples from my album pieces on how I took an improvisation and I refine the edges and I make certain decisions to basically edit this to turn it into a composition. Regarding the use of music theory, I would say I don't use it as a tool in terms of it governing the way I make decisions while I write something, but I do use it, I think, subconsciously, because I'm not aware of the things that I do unless I'm trying to show something, of course, in the video, or maybe I am, for some reason, writing something with a specific rubric, maybe for a personal homework assignment or something else. Like, for example, recently I just wrote something with the Locrian mode because this was a prompt and it was a part of my friend's video, Adam Neely. You might see this coming up. Now, the question about books. This is a very difficult one for me to answer, especially because I go through many books, but I actually never really finish them and read each page. I would maybe focus on sections of them and I use them as resources, but I personally find it extremely difficult and not very interesting to learn about this kind of material through a book, just sitting there reading. Even if you're really close to a piano and you can look at specific examples shown in the books, I just prefer listening to music, looking at scores, and sitting at the piano and figuring things out as I'm writing or as I'm trying little mini assignments for myself and projects. That being said, here is a list of current recommendations. First of all, The Theory of Harmony and The Fundamentals of Music Composition by Arnold Schoenberg. So these are 2 different books. The next one here, 20th Century Harmony by Vincent Persichetti, of course. This one is a favorite amongst many. A Composer's World by Paul Hindemith. Counterpoint by Walter Piston. A Theory of Harmony by John Stainer. And Explaining Tonality, Schenkerian Theory and Beyond, that is the whole title, by Matthew Brown. So these books are ones that have kind of stayed with me. Again, none of these I have obsessed over page by page, but I would say I use them as a healthy reference and I keep coming back to these. To cap off this question, I would suggest the following areas of focus in your studies. Firstly, the fundamentals of Western music theory. And this I would emphasize only to use as an analytical tool as you're studying scores. And this is really about basic scales, keys, basic structures of chords and harmony, all of the basics. And you really can find so much information readily available on YouTube and Google in more efficient ways than a theory book, a theory textbook, because this will take you much longer and this material you can get through much faster than the books suggest. The next area is counterpoint and then harmony, specific to your tastes and interests, whether it be jazz, 18th century, or post-tonal, whatever it is. And then music production. I really believe that this is increasingly becoming important knowledge as a composer, whether you're actually going to partake in the engineering part of while your piece is being produced or not. I still think it's very important. And then lastly, I would say this is not a study per se, but I would spend time and energy into developing your own personal vision. Basically, just defining as best as you can why you're doing what you're doing. Why do you want to do this? Even just being aware of what you care most about in music can make a huge difference. The next question here is whether or not I have specific times of the day where I feel better for certain tasks. Each day I have anywhere from 1 to 5 or more things that are specifically scheduled. Nowadays, these are mostly calls or things on Zoom, and these govern how my day is split. And from there, I look for the longer blocks, basically longer stretches of time during the day to work on heavier and more creative tasks, such as composing or brainstorming for a project. And I really emphasize this because it's not really about what time of day that is. It's just when I have that long stretch of time. If I had a completely free day, I think I would like to start the day off at the piano and do more clerical tasks in the late morning and maybe compose and improvise really late. Also, as someone who relocated from the West Coast to Toronto, what have you found you've really liked about the city? Best of luck. Okay, thank you so much. I love Toronto because of the specific blend of suburban and urbanness here. It's really comfortable to live in because of this, in my opinion. And most importantly, though, I think it contributes to the pace here. It's rather laid back and it has a little touch of intensity, though, here and there. And this, of course, only relates to my specific experience here. And since I don't interact as much with the actual city on a daily basis, I would take this with a grain of salt. The next question here, any thoughts, experience, interests regarding composing for instruments besides piano? I do have experience writing music for instruments besides piano, but of course, not as much. It hasn't been a strong interest for me until quite recently, even though I've written a number of chamber works, mostly trios involving different instrumentation like marimba, piano, cello, clarinet, cello, piano, I think piano, percussion, violin, string trio, different combinations of string trio. I did start a piano trio at one point, but I didn't finish it. But these aren't works that I think I will actually ever publish formally. They have been performed, but I would just clump them into my student beginning composition days. Not that I'm not a student now, but I think you know what I mean. I've been beginning to feel a very strong pull to write for more instruments lately, though. And I also have a video on my process working with the Manitoba Chamber Orchestra uploaded onto YouTube recently. So if you haven't seen that, do check that out. Which is your favorite Beethoven sonata and why? Optional, spicier question, which is more overrated. My current top 3 favorites are Opus 13, Pathétique. Something about it just always feels so epic and so Beethoven. And the second movement is just absolutely gorgeous. And Opus 101, I just think that this is really grand. Opus 110 and Opus 111 are his masterpieces, but just personally, I love Opus 101, and to add one more, Opus 109. So Opus 13, 101, 109. It'll probably change tomorrow, so these are just the ones for today. In terms of overrated ones, I may say Opus 116, Hammerklavier. Of course, this is a grand sonata, just absolutely a masterpiece, but I just don't think that it's grand in the way that people consider it. Personally, just because I'm not drawn to this sonata as much, and I don't think it's his best work. I'll just put it that way. And Waldstein is definitely overrated. I think it's popular because it has a very memorable first movement, and I think that's because of the simplicity of what you're actually listening to. Fast, repeated chords in the beginning. Of course, it's impressionable, but again, it's not his best in my opinion, and I think the impressionableness adds to why it's so famous. Bati, thank you so much for such valuable contributions to the discussions as always. I would also highly recommend checking out Bernstein's lecture series. I have watched them in college, but this is a strong reminder for me to revisit these because these are incredibly inspiring, and I've actually only watched them once in the context of a class, so I will definitely check these out again. I see the timestamp here. Yes, I have been trying really hard to increase my sleep during this year since reading Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. But lately, honestly, I haven't been so diligent about this, and really my most productive hours have been around 2 to 5 a.m. So yeah, I do sleep, but at weird hours lately. And how am I doing lately? I would say not bad. Not the best, but not bad. I say not the best because I'm just naturally anxious. I haven't done the move yet. I'm actually leaving tomorrow. And I don't know if I've mentioned this in the previous video, but I'm driving across the country. So this is quite a large trip. And because of that, naturally, I'm just a little nervous, a little anxious about all of this. And besides that, there are a lot of unstable things in my life right now, which are both fun and stressful. So all of that combined, I'm just doing okay. Thank you so much for asking, though. And thank you to everyone who has been putting in questions to these posts. I'm really loving this format, and I hope this continues because I'm able to answer questions directly. And because of this, please don't hesitate to ask anything. And the more specific, the better. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.